A peaceful summer evening in Montreal's West Island turned into a nightmare that would haunt the community for decades. The year was 1999, and 42-year-old Janet Kuchinsky stepped out for what should have been a routine evening walk. She never returned home. But this wasn't the first time tragedy had struck this quiet Canadian suburb. 3 years earlier, a dedicated police officer named Andre Lalonde made his final traffic stop, not knowing it would cost him his life. Two brutal murders separated by 3 years, yet connected by the same haunting question. Who got away with murder in Montreal's West Island? Before we dive deeper into these chilling cases, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories and hopefully bring attention to cold cases that deserve justice. The West Island region of Montreal, known for its peaceful suburban lifestyle, seems an unlikely setting for such violence. Yet beneath its tranquil surface, dark secrets lurk. Let's begin with Janet Kuchinsky's story. July 10th, 1999. The sun was setting on a warm summer evening when Janet, a beloved member of the community, decided to take advantage of the pleasant weather for an evening walk. She was known for her regular walks along the neighborhood's bicycle paths, a habit that helped her stay active and connected with nature. Her family expected her back within an hour, a routine so normal, so mundane, that no one could have predicted the horror that would unfold. When Janet didn't return home that night, her family immediately knew something was wrong. This wasn't like her at all. The police were contacted and a search began, but darkness complicated their efforts. As the night stretched on, hope began to fade. The next morning, their worst fears were confirmed. Janet's body was discovered in a wooded area, just a kilometer from her home. She had been brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. The peaceful bicycle path she had walked countless times before had become a crime scene. The community was shocked. How could this happen here? In their neighborhood? To someone they knew? The timing of Janet's murder was particularly unsettling. The late 1990s had seen a series of violent crimes against women in Montreal, and the name William Patrick Fife struck terror into the hearts of residents. Fife, a serial killer who would later be arrested for multiple murders in the area, seemed like an obvious suspect. But despite extensive investigation, no evidence could link him to Janet's death. If you're finding this story as disturbing as we did, hit that like button. It helps share these important stories with a wider audience and keeps cold cases in the public eye. The investigation into Janet's murder revealed frustratingly few clues. The murder weapon was never found. Witnesses were scarce. Despite the relatively early hour, no one reported seeing anything suspicious along the bicycle path that evening. It was as if Janet's killer had appeared out of nowhere and vanished just as mysteriously. Did she know her attacker? Was this a random act of violence? Or was there something more sinister at play? The questions multiplied, but answers remained elusive. For Janet's family, the lack of closure would become a constant source of pain. But Janet's case wasn't the only mystery haunting the West Island. 3 years earlier, another brutal crime had shaken the community to its core. The murder of Constable Andre Lalonde would prove to be equally baffling, equally tragic, and just as resistant to resolution. We return to Montreal's West Island, but now we step back in time to April 29th, 1996. The spring evening that would forever change the face of local law enforcement and leave another family searching for answers. Constable Andre Lalonde was 51 years old, a veteran officer with the Montreal Urban Community Police. With decades of experience under his belt, routine traffic stops were second nature to him. He performed thousands of them throughout his career, each one a small but important part of keeping his community safe. That fateful evening, Constable Lalonde spotted a suspicious vehicle and initiated what should have been a standard traffic stop. He couldn't have known that this particular stop would be different. He couldn't have known it would be his last. Quick reminder to our viewers, if you're finding value in these true crime investigations, consider hitting that subscribe button. Your support helps us continue shining a light on these unsolved cases. As Lalonde approached the vehicle, something went terribly wrong. The details of what exactly transpired in those crucial moments remain unclear, but we know the tragic outcome. Shots were fired, and Constable Lalonde was fatally wounded. The vehicle fled the scene, leaving behind a dedicated officer, a loving family man, and a shocked community. The investigation would later reveal that the vehicle Lalonde had stopped was stolen. In fact, it had been linked to a series of bank robberies in the area. The perpetrators were clearly dangerous criminals who had just escalated their activities to an unthinkable level. The murder of a police officer. Hours after the shooting, investigators found the vehicle. It had been abandoned and set on fire, a clear attempt to destroy evidence. This wasn't just a panic response. It showed premeditation and criminal sophistication. The perpetrators knew how to cover their tracks. The investigation moved quickly. The police had a potential suspect in mind, someone connected to the string of bank robberies. But having a suspect and proving guilt are two very different things. Despite their best efforts, investigators couldn't gather enough evidence to file charges. The case grew cold, but it was never forgotten. If you're as invested in this case as we are, take a moment to like this video. It helps us reach more people who might have information about these unsolved crimes. The impact of Constable Lalonde's murder rippled through the law enforcement community. Every traffic stop became a stark reminder of the risks officers face daily. His death changed protocols and heightened awareness, but it couldn't erase the pain of his loss or the frustration of justice denied. The murders of Andre Lalonde and Janet Kuchinsky, though separated by 3 years, share disturbing similarities. Both occurred in the same region. Both involve victims who were simply going about their routine activities. Both left families and a community desperate for answers. And both remain unsolved to this day. Before we move to our final segment, here's a quick reminder to subscribe if you haven't already. Cold cases like these need public attention to stay alive, and your support helps make that possible. The West Island region of Montreal today bears little obvious evidence of the tragedies we've discussed. The bicycle path where Janet Kuchinsky took her final walk still winds through the community. Traffic stops, like the one that claimed Constable Lalonde's life, continue day and night. But beneath this normalcy, the unsolved murders leave an invisible scar on the community's psyche. The timing of these crimes is particularly significant. The late 1990s were a period of transformation for Montreal's criminal landscape. The arrest of serial killer William Patrick Fife brought some closure to several families, but not to Janet Kuchinsky's. The series of bank robberies that may have led to Andre Lalonde's murder represented a violent era in the city's history. If you're finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment to like and subscribe. These aren't just stories. They're real cases that need resolution, and your engagement helps keep them in the public eye. The investigations into both murders remain officially open. Cold case detectives periodically review the evidence, hoping that advances in forensic science might shed new light on old clues. But perhaps the most promising avenue for solving these cases lies not in a crime lab, but in human consciousness. Someone knows what happened to Janet Kuchinsky that summer evening. Someone knows who pulled the trigger during Constable Lalonde's final traffic stop. These individuals have carried these secrets for over 2 decades now. Relationships change, loyalties shift, consciences weigh heavy with time. The West Island community has changed since these murders occurred. New families have moved in, unaware of the tragic history of their peaceful suburbs. But for those who lived through these events, the memories remain vivid. The bicycle path still prompts uncomfortable glances. Traffic stops still carry an extra edge of tension for local officers. The families of both victims have never given up hope for a resolution. They understand that a single tip, a recovered memory, or a change of heart could break either case wide open. This is why sharing these stories matters. This is why we keep cold cases in the public eye. Before we conclude, if you found value in this investigation, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing attention to cases like these. The murders of Janet Kuchinsky and Andre Lalonde remain more than just unsolved crimes. They represent a community's loss of innocence, a reminder that violence can touch even the most peaceful places. They represent unfinished business for law enforcement, and most importantly, they represent an ongoing wound for 2 families still waiting for justice. If you have any information about either of these cases, no matter how insignificant it might seem, please contact the Montreal Police Service. Anonymous tips are welcome, and even the smallest detail could be the key to solving these decades-old mysteries. Remember, cold cases only stay cold when people stop talking about them. Share this video. Discuss these cases. Keep the conversation going. Sometimes justice comes through unexpected channels, and sometimes it just takes one person brave enough to speak up. This has been Montreal's Unsolved Mysteries, the West Island Tragedies. Thank you for joining us in remembering Janet Kuchinsky and Constable Andre Lalonde. Their stories deserve to be told, and their cases deserve to be solved.